Our next speaker is Hanjo, and he will be talking to us about sarbR.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So, FOSS, free open source software. To me, it is one of the most amazing phenomenon that we all get to experience today. It is the culmination of intelligent people around the world collaborating to an altruistic means. Today, this is not what I'm talking about. So, what am I going to talk to you about? I want to talk to you about building sarbR. So, just a little bit about me. I'm a data scientist by practice. We work at a small consulting company in Cape Town called 71.4. And big part of what we want to do is we want to liberate data. And we want to make data that should be available to the public available in easy formats. Okay. So this project is we get aligned with this data liberation strategy, but what actually happened was it was a selfish project for me, because what I wanted to learn is I wanted to learn how to write an API. I wanted to learn how to build authentication engines. I wanted to learn how to build a production pipeline from start to end while integrating every bit of this tool set that I'm interested in. So I think, contradicting with what Colin said today, I didn't use existing tools. I did use, obviously, some packages, but for me, I wanted to learn the in-depths of building what's known as DevOps. So that was kind of the motivation for me. The other motivation was that if you, in any kind of economic situational background or prediction, the SARB data, you use it often. But it either gets released in a PDF, which, to be honest, I don't know how many pages it is, and it's a PDF, and it's a pain to use, and it's difficult to search. So, without further ado, just before I keep going, the things you are about to see is no way endorsed or associated with the South African Reserve Bank. Okay, there's no formal API, so the Reserve Bank doesn't provide any API. So the maintainers of this package rely on their own infrastructure to collect, clean, maintain databases, and the greatest care is taken to keep it updated, but please don't go rely on this data in an automated production setting before we've established a nice framework around it. And then one bit for the DevOps guys in the room before their heads explode, this package uses self-signed certificates on the API side, which, if anyone knows really how to get around that, come and talk to me. So about this package, so like I said, the goal of this package is to liberate the SARB data. And although the SARB has many other data sets, the quarterly bulletin makes up the bulk of their statistical release. So I think now, if anyone did an economics degree, look away because the PTSD is coming. Okay, so this, if you look and you do some exploration, the SARB does release their data in an Excel format, but it takes a lot of Googling and knowing how to navigate their website. So eventually, you end up with this website that has these zip files, and in them, obviously nicely named, and in them, what they've done nicely for you is they have actually been as considerate to split out the frequencies and sheets. Okay, but in essence, this is what you're looking at, and obvious UTC format for dates is very appreciated. Okay, why? Even though you're working with daily data, yeah, they give it to you like this. Very nice of them. So this is what I did. I said, well, this is quite irritating. There should just be a way to call what you need. So I developed sarbR. You can go and install it from the GitHub. And the basic idea is that you can enter a SARB code, and then you get the data back from an API. One thing that I recently added was I added the original date column because I try and make it a little bit easier for whatever data you're calling back to get the dates right, but quarters and calendar quarters and things differ all over the place. So, well done, data packages. That is that. But like I said earlier, is I wanted to make an API, and I didn't want to make it easy to access. Why? Because I felt that I was building this on my little server doing something else as well. So if I have an open API, someone's just going to hit it all the time. So I needed it to respect my authority, okay? So one of the most basic things you learn in the beginning is to actually build in a basic authentication using things like Apache and Nginx. So I'll get to that a little bit later, but this complicated things a bit. So just to show you how I then approached the situation of making it very user-friendly is, okay, so this is the website. So what I do is I have a token requesting system. Why? Because it was interesting for me to know how would you build the database around an auth engine. So it's pretty simple. You install the package, you do a token request. It tells you, token successfully created, well done. The information that I use is your IP address and a little bit of other things. And then here's your token, and now you can go. The idea is then you can just add this token in your R profile, or you set it as an environment variable, and it will pick it up automatically. And the reason why I did it like this is do yourself a favor and go and look at Jenny Bryan's Code Smells and Talks and Feels. And in there, she uses this beautiful pipe operator she calls a coalescing OR function. And it's this way to deal with nulls and authentication function. I thought it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. So I was like, I want to build this into this package. So this was my opportunity to use that pipe. Okay, so then some of the functions that we built in. So yeah, you can use a SARB_code if you know exactly the code you need. So this returns expenditure on gross domestic product at current prices at a yearly frequency. Or if you don't want to set the parameter or the token in your profile, it can just be passed along. The other thing you can do is, what if you don't know what you're looking for? So I built a little regex function. So this takes, you say, description, expenditure, and it will go look up all the possibilities and all the indicators available to you. The same goes for, if you now have an indicator, what are the available frequencies to use? So you can just pump in the frequency code, and you can see, okay, frequency is J1 and M1. And it's obviously very easy to know what those means, but in case you forget, there's just a small little function that you can use to remind you. So, and I think the idea with this package is that to use a KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. There's one or two functions, and they should be able to deliver you what you want. So, as I said, for now, I'm just doing the quarterly bulletin, and if there's any data requests, you can submit that on GitHub, and then we can talk through it and maybe put that up extra. So like I said, for me, the interesting part of this project was for me to use some tools that I enjoy. So this is the gang I used to collect, wrangle, host, and expose. Plumber, what a package. Anyone that's kind of used or trying to develop APIs, that's obviously the way to go. MariaDB is quite new, but it's just the database connectors. Lubridate for dates, read Excel because we need that. Use this to develop the package, Sarangdon for the slides, Snakecase to just standardize across any of the data frames, package down to build the web package website, tidrs to collect the feed from SARB in order to know when to update the databases. And then the nice part, the part that we all kind of shy away from, but I would really encourage people to delve into this, is using Docker, Nginx, and database systems. You know, like even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you kind of get enough jargon to talk to someone who knows what they are doing. So that was some of the things, you know, that I am using. So for the back end, let's chat. So this is what my infrastructure looks like. For instance, there's a World Wide Web with an RSS feed that I just check with a cron job each morning. It then, I'll then create a little function to go and if there's new data, collect it, parse it, put it in the database. These databases is then this idea of there's my tidy data, there's my auth logs, and that's my like authorization layer. And this is all wrapped in a Docker image, which Nginx sits on top of, which means then the user can then connect to the system using the web API or the package. So the other interesting component that I haven't talked about that I built in is authorization logs. Because it was a small server, I didn't want someone to go ahead and just do a map over all available indicators and hit my API, making it slow for other users. So what I did was I added in a 200 max API logs a day, so you can hit the API 200 times a day. And then very brilliantly, I put an assist.sleep 1 second. So there's a 1 second sleep in there just to actually just make sure the server kind of maintains itself. And you'll see on the GitHub page that these will be removed as soon as the package really gets used and I get an idea of server performance. So just to show you some tricks I learned personally. So this little piece of code over here is a bit of Docker code, and this actually sits in my Docker file. So when you open up the Docker file that built all of this, I've got the commands that I ran when I was setting up this Docker environment, because I am Mr. DevOps at our company. And Mr. DevOps probably does this only every 6 months. So I might have Docker stuff running and I've no idea what I actually did. So how did I do this? Well, I built the Docker API using the Docker build command. I then run the Docker and giving it a certain name, adding in, mapping the volumes. And then I open up the firewall on the certain ports. So using IP tables, making sure network traffic only comes through in a certain manner. So that's that. So what else am I doing? Well, I'm using just the run command to install some general libraries for the system. I use Litter. If you haven't heard of Litter, it's like a command line interface built by Dirk. It is amazing to use. So build your libraries, my R libraries. Another interesting thing I learned, which is also maybe if you're building Docker files for R, is try and separate your package installations a little bit spread out, a little bit line by line, because what I found is that Docker build caches nicely each step. So now, as soon as my Docker build breaks because one of the reverse dependency wasn't met, I had to restart the build, which means tidyverse came first, so it took me like 30 minutes to keep building. Where when I just like separated out my packages how I think they should be dependent, then when if something broke, then I would start at that build and not have to start and build everything else. Then I add some environment variables for the API. Why? Because we're using authentication. I start up Nginx, pointing it to the username and passwords, which obviously can get, from there. And then I generate the certificates for Nginx. So this is my self-signature that I'm doing. And the reason why I'm doing self-signature certificates is in order to encrypt my flow of information. Why? Because if I'm building an authentication engine into my API, but sending it across HTTP to a basic auth, I'm pretty much sending clear text. So what's the point of auth in any case? So that was a big thing for me, was I wanted to find out how would you do this. So unfortunately, I have to admit that I haven't gotten around my self-signature errors and R, and I struggled for a bit, and then I gave up, and I was like, no, it's part of the package. It's a feature, not a bug. So, so now, at the end of it all, I run the API. So that's kind of the system that was built in order to just liberate SARB data, publicly available data. Okay, and like I said, I think what I learned is to implement some kind of auth alongside an API in a production environment with multiple things hitting the server, having to optimize my MySQL to make sure the request for like auth happens in milliseconds. And I really got to grips with Docker. I think it's a valuable lesson and a hard one. But as soon as you comfortable that Docker opens up a lot of doors for you. And then at the end, which is actually the end of it, but whatever, hopefully I built something useful out of all of this. So thank you very much.